welcome on this Wednesday to the second Gentian Webcast. Our goal again today is to just keep you informed of what's going on, maybe spread some good news, but really communicate with you in a way that reaches out to you and that's beneficial. We've had phenomenal feedback from the first webcast. Some people have watched it 2 or 3 times, send it to their neighbors. Feel free. This is intended to be helpful, it's intended to be timeless, and it's intended to really be something that you can take and it's designed specifically for you, and then we can talk about individual scenarios offline as well. Let me start with this. Imagine a time when you can see your family, you can hang out with your friends, create memories, go on vacation, create things that last a lifetime again. This will happen again. Lives may change, but many lives will resume to what we call normal. I want to make sure we understand that as we get through this crisis. As the news gets worse and worse, I know it starts to seem as if this may never end. It will change things. This will end at some point, and there'll be results that we'll be able to find out at some point in the future. We don't know what those are yet. But I really wanted to make sure in the beginning that we started with something called going big. Beginning in gratitude maybe seems odd on a webcast, but I realize I missed it last time. I'm not going to miss it this time. So I'm going to give you 60 seconds right now to stop, write down, or talk to the people that you're with about something you're grateful for in the last 30, probably 30 days is good enough because a lot's occurred. What are you grateful for in the last 30 days? Let's take a positive tune. That's about 45 seconds, so I'll have you come back here in about 10 seconds. In these last 5 seconds, I'll share mine. Mine has been the ability to hang out with my wife, my daughters, Belle and Sam. I run home for lunch with them. We have great discussions. We play Monopoly. We've been doing Bible reading. Seeing our team grow in their resiliency, seeing our clients as well. There's really been a phenomenal number of things I can be grateful for. And some days when things are really rough looking, it's tough to do, but that practice continually helps me. How about yourself, Ken?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I'm grateful for my family, my wife. She's been fantastic with the kids. As we all know, schools are shut down right now. Every part of our home has something. It's either math, reading, science. She's doing a fantastic job with the kids, so I'm absolutely grateful for that. Also, my grandmother just turned 91 right now on Sunday, so happy birthday, Grandma. And so she's in a nursing home right now, so we can't see her, which is very tough right now. And she also has a little bit of Alzheimer's, but we're grateful for that. She's 91 and still going, so which is
awesome.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you, Ken. How about Zach?
Absolutely. It seems like family is a very common theme as far as gratitude and what we're thankful for, and I'll echo that as well. I got to go home last weekend and celebrate my dad's 75th birthday with my mom and my dad, and instead of watching TV or falling into some of those ruts, we played cards together both nights. So we shared in a lot of different laughs, and I'm extremely thankful for that time, and also personally really use this quarantine to focus on things to better myself, whether that's health, fitness, really diving in. And even when the whole world is surrounding us with negative news or could be perceived as negative news, I recently read something that said to tell yourself every single day that I am strong, I am healthy, and I am blessed. And you repeat that to start the day. And I've done it for the last 4 days, and it has dramatic results on your thoughts and even your whole day in general and how you react or respond to certain events around you.
Thank you, Zach. It's really interesting to watch in a time like this how things have gone to social distancing, which you'll see different than the first webcast. You actually do, when we measured, we are 6 feet apart. We actually take it very seriously. I may make light and joke about it, but we're doing everything. We have contingency plans. We're having difficult discussions about if somebody is to be infected, that we know what happens. The safety precautions we're taking both here and at home for the safety of our team and for the safety of you as clients. So that's a very important thing. So those are some of the things that we're doing. I won't go into too much more of the detail of that, but just make sure that you understand we're putting procedures and have procedures together for that as well. Probably some of the most important things I'd like to thank you for is our clients for being faithful and patient during VUCA times. What I'd like to say is that VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I think you'll agree with me, if any other time was to exemplify that, it would be now. I want to say that, like I said, I learned something different in every correction. This one has been absolutely the most amazing. What happens when humans are confronted with a pandemic crisis like this is amazing. First of all, I think amongst us, your response has been one of the most amazing and universal in that your first comment is, how are you doing? That's happened on our phone calls where we're calling you or you're calling us. And that's absolutely very humbling and amazing that the first thing you do exemplify is caring for us. It shows a lot about who you are. Thank you. Your concern that also not talking too much on the phone or too long, concern that you can make sure we get to everybody. One of the best things I think that I've done over history is to create this team. You know, it was myself and 2 or 3 of us, but we now have 10 of us who are able to reach out on our behalf and also answer any questions, be it here or remote. That's one of the times is preparing for times like now when we have to push aside all the things that we have personally and really answer your questions and be here for you. So that's been one of the best things that we've seen as well. Your faith, patience, and discipline have also been remarkable. It's you we want to applaud during this correction. By and large, you've remained extremely patient. You've realized that it's your plan and that these extenuating circumstances don't change your plan. Many of you have been with us during times like these as well, and for you, it's your strength, confidence, and faith and patience with us that you've exemplified 2 or 3 times that make this one maybe, although we don't enjoy these times, still quite bearable and able to get through on a really easy basis, which is important as well. These events also show human kindness. Let me give you a couple samples. I know it doesn't get a lot of coverage, but you start looking at the good things happening about people who don't have lunches available, people who are on welfare maybe, and things they're getting in our neighborhood alone, reaching out to the older residents to go out and buy them groceries or get them meals, or just talk to them if they're lonely and they feel isolated. We're also seeing a lot of people donating food across, and also masks. Over here at Concordia, they're printing the N95 masks on their 3D printers for the hospitals in the area because they're running low. There's incredible things occurring out here as well. For instance, people calling their personal service person, people who cut their hair, people who make a living on the day-to-day basis of actions they can't do right now, and saying, hey, listen, can I give you a tip? Can I pay for some haircuts ahead of time? I reached out to mine, and Carl responded that I'm responding with tears of joy of relationship. And it just a very interesting, very touching, but it was just a simple gesture to say, hey, are you doing okay? So reaching out like that to those of us who have abundance and gratitude makes a great difference in the world and can help everybody get through this time. So those are a couple of things I think that I'd like to say. We're living in VUCA times, which is really interesting. These are scary times and seem like they've never happened before. Until we talk to you. What's really interesting is that the stories of your life are really exemplified by a great friend of mine and coach, Dan Sullivan. I'll read you exactly his quote. He's been sending us something every day. He's 74 years old, and what he says is, I've lived through a lot of scary times in my life. I was born 2 weeks before the Normandy invasion in 1944, which changed my life a lot, and for my parents and their generation. After that, I experienced a lot of change firsthand. The Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the polio scare, Kennedy's assassination. He says, it seems like there's always a new, scary challenge to face. And since becoming an entrepreneur, which he is, and a coach, I've come up against many more personally scary times as a result. I'm sure you can relate. This just echoes a lot of your conversations. I tend to find that our clients who are probably 65 and 70 and older, who experienced polio, who experienced a lot of these things before, they say it's not as familiar. Ken and I and our whole team was trying to figure out, why do they seem less concerned? Because a few of them have actually said, we've been through this before. It was named something different. So this isn't to mean that we're going to minimize what happens now, but it's interesting, once you've experienced something, perspective tends to jump in and you start to get this resiliency. And really the biggest key is we have a plan. What is a plan? We have one for each one of you, but a plan is a solid basis to operate from when unexpected things happen. That's what we view it as. It's a baseline for our behavior during extreme times. It brings rational thought to extreme unknown future scenarios. This is now more known, but the future is still unknown. This too shall pass. Now I want to say that on two things. This too shall pass stands for both extremes, good and bad. Phenomenal times will pass, bad times will pass. The beautiful thing about human memory historically, it tends to delete the bad times and mainly remembers the good. That is a phenomenal piece we have going for us as well. A couple of things I want to say. Once you kind of develop resilience during times like these, it'll show up again for you next time you need it. So for instance, go back to something in your life that seemed insurmountable. There's no way I can handle this. Was it? Was it truly insurmountable? I look at it as, what did you learn from it? Did it shape you? It probably made you who the person you are now is, and you became better in some way. Things either happened to you or for you. I view for you, because you can learn from almost everything in that as well. I find that often people come out a better version on the other side of the crisis if they can tap into that resiliency and redevelop it, I should say. Another thing too is right now capture. It's a great time to capture how you're feeling, what's going on, the day-to-day fluctuation of how you feel. Why? It could help somebody in many future years or yourself refer back to it to say, wow, this is how I felt. That's right. Things get really bad first, and the markets tend to exemplify putting the worst case scenario in effect immediately. It runs immediately to that spot, and it can price it in by the minute. The markets price fear in by the minute. So you want to make sure you do that. But capture the dread and elation of how human emotions are going. What we're encouraging is to take time and capture this, because what you're going to find is you can share this or not. I'm going to encourage you to do a little bit more than that as well, too, in a little bit later here. But one more thing I want to say. With a lot of the media that's out there as well, people are looking to things or saying, I heard something from somebody. You're going to find that cousin or that friend or that brother or that relative who does this for you as well. So substitute them in for this. You know who they are. Hopefully it's not you. But I got to ask a question. Is there a time to throw your plan to the whim of some random expert or person on TV or an article from someone who claims to know what happens next? My answer is no. Which is truly unknowable events such as this are. As our friend Nick Murray states, there are no future facts. So knowing what's happening in the future is unknowable. We just have to be prepared for what we will do when those unknown events happens. So this pandemic is called the coronavirus, right? That's what this one is called. We are going to have future events. They're not like this very often, but 3 to 5 times in your life you might find these. We don't know what they're named, but we know what we'll do with your plan to get through it. So those are a couple of different pieces that I've wanted to go through as well. If you actually right now, and this is interesting, if you go on the internet right now, you can find something to bolster any position that you believe in or want to support. Right now you can go on and Google anything you want, and the nice thing about the way Google is built, or the bad thing about it's built, it's going to create all the articles you want to support whatever crazy opinion that you have. So what's really interesting is be careful in what you're searching for, because you're going to find it. So you got to make sure you're always reflecting on what's important to you, what should I do now, and maybe a little less media consumption right now, which I know many of you don't do any at all, is probably a great idea as well. And I think that those are very important. So I'll pause here a little bit as well. What I have is Zach has a couple things he'd like to share, and Ken as well. I'll start with those perspectives. I'll jump back more into mine. But here's, we really have probably 3 or 4 or 5, 6 hours worth of stuff that we've written or want to give to you or talk to you about. We're going to try to consolidate all this 30 to 45 minutes at times. We're going to ask you, though you respond to the email as well, and start to give us some of the things. Would you like to see more of these kind of conversations? We love these if those work for you. But even recording a few of these things and giving you more. I've got about probably 40 pages of stuff that I've written about this over time in perspectives, things I've read and things I've kind of put together. You may want more of those. We can literally put those together and send more as well. So we're really interested in what's most helpful to you. So.
Yeah, that's a good piece, Chris. Thank you very much for that. And I want to piggyback on what Chris said. We miss you. Last week was supposed to be a review week with a lot of you, face-to-face. This week is spring break with the kids, as many of you know. Next week is supposed to be a review meeting as well, face-to-face, and we're not having those, of course, for obvious reasons. But we miss you. I miss hearing the stories from you. I miss hearing, telling me how warm it is in Florida and Arizona all the time, and how cold it is here in Wisconsin. I miss you telling me about the stories about your trips up and down the Danube and the Rhine River when you go on your river cruises. I miss hearing about your kids and your grandkids and how you buy hundreds of Hot Pockets for them at college. I mean, these are all things that keep us going. And sometimes when we do these reviews year in and year out, we love them, and sometimes we forget how important they are to us actually as well. So we love hearing your stories. Don't ever stop. And I know that your kids, your grandkids are the smartest ones in the world. I understand that. That's awesome, though. Another piece here is, I've heard this a few times on the phone, I want to address it, is that when you call in and we have a conversation, yes, we are busy. That's why we're here. We have a great team. We're here to help you, and a lot of you say, I don't want to take up too much of your time. We completely respect that, but I also want you to know is that that's why you hired us to do the job that we're doing right now for you. We are here for you, whether that takes 1 phone call, 10 phone calls to get you to where you need to be to feel comfortable, if it's planning, if it's advice you're looking for. Again, we are here. We've assembled a fantastic team to help you through these times, and that's what we're going to do for you. A couple things on the planning side of things that we're hearing right now and that we're helping clients with right now, and some concepts that are out there. Qualified charitable distributions. You all know, some of you know what those are. That's where you take money from your IRA and give it directly to a charity of your choice. Church comes into play with that a lot. Also, required minimum distributions. That's something that a lot of you take money out of your portfolio every year. Right now, we're evaluating and reading and learning as we go minute to minute here whether this is going to be, if the RMDs are going to be potentially suppressed this year, if they're going to be delayed by a certain time frame. Just like when we look at our coaches, Ed Slott, who's the foremost tax expert on IRAs and financial planning that are our coaches, they sent out something a couple days ago, actually right here on March 20th, saying that IRA contribution deadlines extended to July 15th, along with the tax filing deadline status as well. That's on July 15th. So these are some of the things that, as we know them and they become evident, we'll be sharing those with you on these podcasts that we're doing right now, also on the phone calls that we talk to you as well. But the RMDs, we're not quite sure what that looks like for right now. So if you need money and we're taking money out of our portfolio, continue to do that. Again, we'll adjust, we'll adapt as we know more. That's the planning and the advice part that we'll give you when you need it the most. Also, Roth conversions, that's a conversation right now. So basically, if you think about it, there's a spring right now. The markets have suppressed right now, temporarily. The spring is loaded. And when things rebound back up, it'll spring back. So the idea of a Roth conversion is sliding money from your traditional IRA over to your Roth IRA. So when things do likely rebound back up, you'll have the earnings in your Roth, not in your traditional IRA. Again, the IRS has a little bit of a pecking order when it comes to this. We have to keep this in mind. So the IRS says we have to take out qualified charitable distributions first, then RMDs, which are required minimum distributions, and then also the Roth conversion has to come third. So the Roth conversion is in addition to what the RMD amount would have been for the year. So if we want to do the Roth conversion, sometimes we have to rush through the process and rush to the RMD to get to the Roth conversion concept if you're taking money out of your portfolio and you have to. If you don't have required minimum distributions, we can talk about the Roth conversion right away. So it's a really good idea there. One of the things that I've heard on the telephone with you and that we talk internally about is the idea of when to do the Roth conversion. It's a number one question. If we want to do the Roth conversion, when do we do it? We have to kind of take a step back and think of why are we doing the conversion in the first place? Well, we're trying to get money into a situation where the growth on our earnings, the growth on our monies that are going to happen over time are in a bucket that currently is tax-free right now. Even on the earnings, when you pull them out of the Roth IRA, they're tax-free. So they're very beneficial dollars to have. Now, when we do that is when you look at where the bottom of the market is. Everyone talks, hey, where's the bottom? Where is a good time to do it? Being an equity investor, we never really know where the bottom is. We have to have faith, though, that if we look where we were and where we are today, the conversation starts to begin like, you know what, we're in a better position to do a Roth conversion today than we were before. So being an equity investor, we're never going to pick the bottom. We're never going to pick the top. That's just part of the process. But we have to come to a realization that now is probably becoming a very good time to consider these topics of Roth conversion. So those are the things that I had for today. Again, back to the QCDs, the RMDs, Roth conversions. Again, as you call in, we'll handle these for you, but we'll do the proper planning and give you the proper advice that you need to really come out really nicely on the other side of this.
Yeah, just to define as well, because sometimes we speak in financial jargon, I just realized qualified charitable distribution is something you can do if you're over 70 and a half and you have required distribution. So RMD is required minimum distribution as well. So some of those apply to those clients of ours who have reached 70 and a half and older, or for the qualified charitable distributions, or 72 and older for the required minimum distributions. I know sometimes I talk in jargon. I just wanted to throw those two things out, but Ken, those are phenomenal ideas, and we're getting up-to-date, constant information from both Ed Slott, all of our coaches, if you will. It's really been a phenomenal outpouring to see. So thank you, Ken. Thank you as well. So just let me give you something too. During this broadcast, I had somebody email me something very quickly, and I saw it, which is a nice story in the news about a lady buying supplies for an Appleton homeless shelter. She had more of some restricted supplies than Walmart allowed. The guy behind her put some of it in his cart, then other people behind him. The lady got all of her stuff, and nobody wanted to be paid. So those are the good stories coming out. Please feel free to share those with us. We'll probably post something on our website or an email to you about these great stories. They're great and refreshing. This is the human that's out there. It's not the negative stuff you hear all the time. So I just wanted to bring that piece up as well. What's really interesting is, again, I want to give Zach a little bit of time here. He's got some phenomenal perspective as well. So I'll pass maybe the mic over to Zach here for a moment too.
As you guys know from our recent seminars, I love the fundamentals of everything, of breaking things down from advanced to simplest. And sometimes on the news right now, or in general, we hear about bear market. And that term is used very loosely. And so the purpose of this here today and the information I'm about to share with you is to provide a little bit of perspective on what it is, and also how many times it's happened over history and how long they've lasted as well. So real quickly, just a fun little fact, how did they get their names? We hear bull market and we hear bear market, and there's quite a different answers if you Google it. But the most common is that when attacking their opponent, a bull's horns go up and a bear's claws go down. So I would have loved to be there the day that they thought about that.
That's awesome.
The extreme one is going way back to trappers and them selling ahead of time bear pelts and things like that before they even had them. But I decided to choose the basic one for you guys today.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Zach. It's funny.
But what is a bear market? Again, we hear it on the news. We hear it in articles. We even say it in our seminars and in different events as well. But typically, when the market, S&P 500, closes 20% down from its recent peak, that triggers a bear market. So if the S&P 500 were to be at 3,000 and drops down to 2,400, that would trigger the start of a bear market. The next question would be, well, when does that end? It ends when we go from that 2,400, if we're using the same example, to re-reaching that 3,000 peak that it once was. And once it reaches that $3,000 mark, then it starts the next bull market. The next question would be, how many times has this happened? Is this new? Is this just happening? Is this volatility where we drop from a recent peak down 20+%? Is this new? And the answer is that this has happened actually 14 times since 1929. And it could be 15 if you include right now, but we haven't seen it all the way through. And it could slightly be one more, because if you guys remember at the end of 2018, September through December, the S&P 500 went down 19.8%. So it was very close, did not trigger the rule, but we still felt that. So it still feels the same as well. But how long have they normally lasted? That's the next question that comes up. And the average of all of those different bear markets since 1929 is 22 months, with a range of being 3 months to 61 months. So if we take out that outlier of 61 months, which was following the Great Depression and following World War II, it's actually closer to 16 months. And the 3 longest recoveries that it took to get from that 20% drop back to its peak was from 1937 to 1942, 1929 to 1932, and 1946 to 1949. So those were some extremely rough times, and that alludes to what Chris mentioned before, is that some of you have lived through these or heard them from your parents or grandparents as well. So it's new in the sense of a coronavirus, but we've always been through going tough times over the course of history as well. The last 2 facts that I have for you are, what are the average returns during a bear market and also following a bear market? So 1 year return after reaching that 20% low and working our way back up is positive 47%. That's 1 year following that time frame.
Wow.
And then just as a perspective of the number of months since 1929 that we've either been in a bull market, the market trending upward, or in a bear market trending down. For a bull market, it's 802 months. And for a bear market, it was 278 months. Again, a little outlier of the 61 months at the end of World War II. But percentage-wise, that comes to 75% of the time that we're in a bull market and 25% of the time that we're in a bear market. So again, the purpose of this was just to create a little bit of perspective, because when we get so consumed by the news and all of the information that hits us on our phone, then on the news, then our friends, it's really hard to take a step back, watch our movie, and remember what happened as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate that. It's really an interesting perspective. I mean, this is, for instance, anyone who sold earlier probably is feeling pretty good right now until yesterday. And the adage over timing is they believe they've got that, timed out right. It still doesn't work. The issue is, if you sold out, you've got to get in at some lower point, which is kind of an amazing thing. But it's probably provided them with the delusion that they have a hot hand. And now, in a gambling term, they're going to sit at the table and play blackjack until they lose all their money. Now, the market is up about 70% of the time. Historically, it's a long-term uptrend punctuated by the temporary downturns that Zach was talking about. So I think it's very important to bring this up to people. But don't get me wrong. We're talking a lot about stuff that is, timeless, and it's somebody else and it's tested. But don't get us wrong. We know this. You are fretting about your personal financial situation. We get it. One of my clients who returned from Florida last week was talking about down at the pool, there's a whole bunch of gentlemen way older than him, and he's, say, let's call 65, so a bunch of much older gentlemen who were all gathered together, and he said, hey, how you guys dealing with this? And not a single one of them was worried about the virus. They were all fretting about what had happened with their portfolios. So what started as a medical issue turned into a financial issue, because that's how human beings reflect their worry and anxiety. The market is there and available to immediately reflect that. So it was an interesting story, but we get it. So don't get us wrong. We're not just trying to say forget it all. We understand it. It's your personal financial situation. I think sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that they hired market timers. Not you. You know that. We are not market timers, never have been, never will be. Any timing we get, honestly, is by luck, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But a lot of people out there think, man, I should have gotten out. How could we not see this? And oftentimes, once you get past it, that's what's going to infect most people. How could we not see this? Somebody saw it, and for the 3 or 4 people who were lucky enough to sell, you're going to historically find that most of them have zero ability to tell you when to get. Matter of fact, they are the single worst people to follow for recovery, because they've been negative way before this. They're also negative on a go-forward basis. So it's really interesting. I've been reading some, over my lifetime, some historical studies of experts, and that's a very, very big part of it. What's interesting as well is markets historically tend to bottom well before the worst news hits. So if we think it's going to get a whole lot worse, for instance, in 1942, the market hit bottom in the correction that Zach was talking about. The worst news about World War II occurred in 42, 43, 44, and eventually was solved in 45. The market had bottomed well before that, because it took the worst case scenario And from there, it continued to move up in a somewhat decent format, which is interesting to see. Another one, we were talking to a client recently about their home. So, for instance, I have no intention of selling my home. Let's say it's worth $300,000. But if I priced it like the market, right now, it's worth zero, because nobody's got an offer out there, nobody's willing to write a check for it, okay? So if your house tomorrow is worth $240,000 and you had no intention of selling it, would you run out and sell it to get rid of it just to keep the value that you have in it now? The answer is no. The answer was no. In our conversation, it's well, then why would we do that in the market? You had no intention of selling any of these stocks that are in your portfolio before this happened, but because they're down, you want to run out and sell them. That's just a different way of looking. We want to be very careful of doing that, just to offer some perspective, as we go along as well.
Yeah, when I read the book right here, the manias, panics, and crashes, it kind of alludes to what Chris just mentioned about in the 40s with the world wars. You look back at the Spanish flu is another great example of this. You know, that was a 50 million person death at that point in time. I mean, that was massive, right? When you look at the Spanish flu and where the markets have bottomed, the markets actually bottomed in 1917, but the worst information about the Spanish flu came out in 1918. So there's always an anticipatory about where the markets are, and they're trying to anticipate what's going to happen here. So
that's good. Thank you, Ken. Well, one thing you'll find right now is there's a shortage of two things: toilet paper and good news. So our goal is obviously not to give you toilet paper, but it's to give you the good news that's possible. You heard that from us before. I read a book called The Land of Hope recently. If you got time to read, it's a phenomenal book of the economic history of the United States going back to around 1200. I know for a lot of you that sounds super exciting. Just about like reading mania, panics, and crashes during a crash, not that much fun. But what it does for us, prepares us and gives us perspectives for you. What's really interesting is right now, I'd say that, let me give you one joke. I'm a dad, Ken's a dad, we're dads here, a couple of us are, so it's pretty interesting. Some of us are. But let me give you one joke for a little bit of humor as well. There is no COVID-19 in Antarctica. You know why? Because they are isolated. You tell your grandkids that if you want, but at least there's a little levity and humor you can offer in that as well. Back to our subject too, but while you like to hear quotes from Buffett, Brian Westbury, Ben Graham, and Nick Murray, let me make a statement. You are not Warren Buffett. You do not have his capital, his demeanor, or his wisdom. 3 times his life, so he's 89 years old, 3 times his life is back to the founding of our country. So some of you have that for age, but it hasn't been in this respect. So what's very interesting is you don't have $60 billion to play with, so if you lose $5 billion, you're okay. So it's just a different world. But we get this. This is a personal situation right now. We understand that. What we're doing is using Buffett-style wisdom with personal knowledge of your situation and really putting this together to understand that this is your personal capital and your scenario, and as such, we're addressing each concern in that method. So some of the blanket statements we make don't apply to many of you. If you're 41 years old and you're accumulating, which a lot of our clients have been introducing us to their children, and we've had a few younger retirees as well, this is an accumulation time frame. This is phenomenal. Do not stop adding to your 401k. Do not sell out of bonds, because another thing that happens, yesterday is one of the best examples in history. I'm going to make a weird comment. I'm a fan of the band Rush. I put 3 little figures on my desk yesterday, which are kind of these cute little figurines that my cousin gave to me for my birthday. And yesterday the market closed up 2112, 2,112 points. If anybody knows that band, that's one of their albums. I don't know if it was anything, but if you got some great little figures, we'll bring them out and see if we can get a great return based on those as well. Just a little bit of humor and an aside as well. But what's really interesting about this is we understand that your personal capital, your personal scenario is what we're addressing with this concern. We know that this is what supports you, your happiness, and your experiences most. So what's really interesting is we'd like to ask as well is, what do you want to hear from us most? Those are things you can respond to for us in this with the emails as well, because there's a lot of things that come out here. For instance, some things that we're doing at home. I watched a few great movies with our family. 2 great movies we watched are Mr. Rogers with Tom Hanks. Phenomenal. If you want a hero, a nice piece of hope, it's a great one as well. Miracle about the boy who fell into water. I won't give you the story of it, but it's a great one down in St. Louis. And there's another one, if you like movies that maybe are inspirational in the Christian nature, there's something called Pure Flix you can subscribe to, and pretty much any movie you find in there is able to be watched by your family and children as well. So we'll give you some more of this kind of stuff. We're actually putting together, Ashley has a great page put together that you're going to get as a resource today, both on our website and email to you, of things that are open, things to do, just helpful ideas from us as well as we can move forward. Somebody recently said this as well. It was kind of funny. They were talking about, geez, professional advice is expensive. And we said, oh, really? If you feel professional advice is expensive, try amateur. So what's really interesting is I typed that in. Amateur autocorrects as mature, which means not mature. Quite funny anyway. I thought that was pretty funny as I typed that in preparing for this. As we've done through our careers, we strive to be there when you need us. Today is really to provide you that timeless and consistent results, as Ken and Zach have both said. We really want to reach out to you, and we don't want to reach out too much to worry you, but it's very important to know that in corrections, the habits that are formed either promote us or demote our carefully laid plans. That's extremely important to know. And here's how we view it. We over-prepare you in times like these, but honestly, I always feel that we could have done more. I always feel like we could do more lifeboat drills, more drills in perspective, more modeling of what may happen. But this reminds me of a story. I'm sitting in a meeting with a client, and I start to go over the normal lifeboat drills, or what is a correction, what happens when the market's correct, and the client stops me cold and says, yeah, we got that. So what's interesting about that is we like the fact that we try to over-prepare for the corrections. It's in every review we have, every meeting, because we know this is when you need us. This is why we do that. So thank you again for listening. Thank you for being there and prepared. What we want to do is you may need us 3 to 5 times like this in your lifetime, but these are the 3 to 5 most important financial times in your life that you will need anyone. So we think that's an important piece.
Yeah, before Chris closes here, I want to just mention about the March statements that are going to come out probably in about a week or a week and a half or so. Just be prepared for that. A lot of the correction, a lot of the downturn that's happened so far has happened in March. So be prepared for that. It reminds me of Warren Buffett. Chris mentioned Warren Buffett. Actually, I have my Berkshire tie on today because I do believe in Warren Buffett's timelessness of everything. But we think about 2008. We think about March of 2009 when the market bottomed out at that point in time. It reminds me of a great quote from Warren Buffett. I think this is a really important one to keep in mind right now. The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. I find that to be very profound because as we get our statements, we might have a tendency to be impatient at that point in time. But again, stay calm, stay cool, stay collected. This is the time where you need to stay according to your plan because those statements are going to be coming out in March, and just be prepared for them.
That's a good one. Thank you, Ken. One thing it does as well is your statement is about what has happened, not about what will happen in the future. Recency heuristic is something that happens to us as human beings, which says something that has just happened is going to continue to happen. And then you see people freak out. Next month, there'll be a period of time. I'm going to say that yesterday is not the end of the bear market. There might be, and there typically is historically another testing of that after this as well. There may or may not be. I don't know. We just study. History doesn't always repeat itself, but it rhymes. That's said by Mark Twain. Again, I think it's just important to go through that. So giving you an idea, this is probably going to get worse. The news will definitely get worse before it gets better. You may start to see the market meander upward, but it will probably hit some sort of an event next month, people seeing their statements, and correct again because they go, oh my gosh, I've got to get out. But again, this is where patience in our plan makes a massive difference. Historically, don't know if this will happen, when things drop and the spring compresses really quickly, it also recovers in a similar fashion. That's not a guarantee, there's none of that, but it's just something that you may want to think of and look for as well. One thing we do is read a lot of books on human behavior and markets like this, and we still do. But we had a conversation with a client in this scenario too. The person wanted to get out and go to cash with some of their assets. And I said, okay, so let me ask you a question. If you do that, if you sit in cash for the rest of your life, here's 3 things. You must work longer or go back to work. You must spend less for the rest of your life, or you won't be able to pass money on to your kids. And these were 3 of their goals. Now, it's something that I get. This is a long-term plan laid well. We had this conversation, and this wasn't even in this correction. But I always remember these times, and I want to share those with you because as you go through this, that part remains timeless. This is where you keep your plan intact. I did ask this question, too, to somebody recently. They were kind of getting anxious about this, and they said, what corrections, I asked them, what corrections in your life would you have been better off today had you sold? I said, go back to your grandparents. What correction would you have better off if you sold then and didn't get back in? Really quiet for a moment, and they said, none. Never. Wow, that's interesting. It was an interesting comment, but we want to bring that up sometimes because when we get in this really recency heuristic and real myopic, we forget about that long-term uptrend that the markets have been. No guarantee that it'll continue. I got to always say that. I mean, I want to make sure you know we don't know what's happening tomorrow, but today is sunny. Tomorrow will either be partly cloudy or sunny or totally cloudy and rain. I'm just going to give you that as a weather forecast. One thing I want to tell you, too, is every financial crisis, like we just talked about, says, how could we miss this? How could we go through this? It's an interesting piece. Don't beat yourself up about it. There's very, very few market timers that get it right, and most of the market timers that I've seen over time tend to get it wrong 8 or 9 times before they get it right once. So just take a look at that, and that does not add up to a successful scenario. A couple things I want to ask is I say a lot of prayers for you. If you have somebody who needs a prayer, please let us know who that is. I'll put their name in directly as I go through and do prayers in the morning or in the evening. Also, please pray for our healthcare professionals on the front line, the workers as they remain healthy and they can serve us, the essential businesses that are remaining open. Pray for their health. It's a great time to look at that and really encourage everybody to join in for that piece as well. My wife has gave us something too. When you look at the CDC, one of the best websites if you're following the coronavirus at all is don't take the opinions of everybody on social media. I read some of them, and it's all over the map. I just read them to see what was out there, and it's exactly what you'd expect. It's everything and anything anybody'd ever want to say. But the CDC updates occur at 4 p.m. daily. So if you want to take a look at that, take a look at that. I think it's 4 o'clock daily. It could be a.m. or p.m. But the CDC's website will show you a map. It shows you all sorts of stuff, where it's happening, what to do, and what's going on. As this goes on, the one thing we worry about is over-preparing you, talking too much about this or reaching out too often and really concerning you because, you know, that's not been our style during corrections. Our style is to get through, be very stoic about it, but we understand you as people would want to hear from us. So one good thing would be to let us know what you'd like to hear about. In programs like this, shorter ones, recorded ones, we're going to record something. I told Ken this, I hadn't done it yet, but we're going to record something for your kids. You can send to them about, hey, don't stop investing in your 401k. It's a great time to do it, especially if this is your first correction. So this is really what we want to do. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you'd like from us as far as in how we present this to you. And hopefully this has been a great fashion. Thank you tremendously for your time, for listening, for tuning in. For the many who've re-listened to the very first program 2 and 3 times, one of our clients actually said to Peter, they had a phone call review with him, and they said, oh no, right before this we watched the program 2 or 3 times. You answered all our questions. It's kind of amazing, but we try to do that. We try to think for you and be very empathetic. We feel this with you. We just want to put a little bit of brightness on a bright sunny day here in Wisconsin anyway, where it's going to be 54 degrees. Go outside, keep your social distance, but have a walk. Do something to kind of increase your spirit. Step away from the TV. Read a great book. These are things that we want to offer to you. So I want to thank you tremendously for your trust in us, your behavior, your faith, patience, and discipline. You're letting us all reach out to you as well. I think we're very, very interested. We're not going to reach out to everybody to alarm you, but if there's something that needs to be done, we'll reach out as well. If you have a question, you can feel free to reach out too. We want to make sure that you know that. I'll do little touch-base emails as well. But mostly, thank you. We're with you during this. We'll be with you through it. Thank you for all of the support that you've given to us. We continue to offer that to you, and we're truly humbled that you have given us your trust and faith. If you want to send this out to anyone else, feel free. Once we get it approved, probably Friday or so, we'll get this approved. And just use it for anything that you'd like to. It's meant to help people. If they want to introduce or talk to us, feel free. If you have somebody who's not getting talked to that needs to be talked to because advisors are not reaching out, please let us know as well. As why we've developed the team we will here. Our first focus is on you, but we want to help those you love as well. So thank you for allowing us to speak on this webcast, and we look forward to our future time together and doing these on a consistent basis every Wednesday, maybe ongoing forever. We'll see. Thank you.